I went to the University of Sydney, did finance and accounting there. That's where I first developed my interest across all of finance. Recently, the last few weeks, I landed a role as an equity research analyst here at CLSA, owned by Citi Securities. I guess your mock interviews or your technical courses, or just, your 7 stories. For me, I love doing it because you feel quite established afterwards. You feel a lot more confident.
Looking back at your journey, kind of anything you would have changed or any kind of piece of advice?
It's not enough to just be a smart person. You have to really understand.
All right, Mithun, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
It'd be awesome if you could just give the listeners kind of a short summary bio, where you're from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, cool. So I'm in Sydney, so I'm a bit further away from you guys, but grew up in Sydney. I've been working in finance now for a few years. Went to the University of Sydney, did finance and accounting there. That's where I first developed my interest across all of finance. You meet a few people, attend a few networking sessions. And then I guess my first real exposure was during an internship in university at a boutique investment firm where it wasn't directly working with equity research, but you're working across the middle market side. You're supporting the financial advisors. You're speaking to a lot of people. And I think that's where it really jump-started my interest working within that field of finance, largely equity research. Moving down a couple of years, joined Deloitte in the deal and advisory space, specifically across capital markets. A lot more consulting oriented, a lot more deal work. And it was great skills being built there. But again, I think having that passion for the equity markets, largely from a research side, kind of got me a bit more interested into, go to shareholder events, messaging people on LinkedIn, meeting people through mutuals. And I guess not just to get a referral, but I guess more so just to understand the industry a bit more, take on some advice, what it's like working in day-to-day in equity research. And I guess, as of recently, the last few weeks, I landed a role as a equity research analyst here at CLSA, owned by Citi Securities. So they're pretty big across the APAC markets over here, big little headquarters down in Hong Kong. And then they've got offices scattered across Australia, Singapore, China. And been working here for a month now. I cover largely real estate, so commercial, logistics, retail, residential properties. And it's a very interesting line of work, long hours, but it's definitely what I wanted to break into.
It's awesome, man. Congrats. That's a huge move. Obviously, I think you kind of had that spark, like you said, kind of back in 21, 22 from that initial internship where you were getting a little exposure to the equity market and maybe didn't get to scratch that itch till now. So congrats on getting into it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah.
So I'd love to just go back a little bit, just when you were in school and kind of did get that kind of more middle office role at, Shaw and Partners in Sydney, and more specifically, like what that was day to day. Were you was equity research even on the radar back then when you were starting school? Like obviously you were finance and accounting, so you probably knew all these different.
Yeah. Well, I guess Sydney, it's a much smaller market than your respective cities in the US, Europe. And so as a result, I guess the influence here isn't as large. There's not a big number of internship opportunities or investment firms. There's a few mom and dad shops here.
Yeah.
And that's what Shaw and Partners was. And at the time, I knew I wanted to work in finance. In terms of whether I wanted to work in the deal space and M&A or corporate finance or research was not necessarily something I was certain of at the time.
Yep.
And I guess with that role, because it was a bit more client service facing, you're not necessarily working on the front office side.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, because it's a boutique firm, you talk to a lot of people. So your day-to-day, you're talking to research, you're talking to advisors, you're talking to institutional sales. And I think that's where you kind of understand, okay, this is what your day-to-day is going to look like. These are the hours. This is the kind of fields you'll be dealing with. And then I think with the research specifically, I've always had a passion for investing on the side. And I think with the research side, specifically sell side, these guys were, I guess, quote unquote, the smart guys in the office. These guys are the ones doing the dirty work from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., just analyzing markets, doing valuations, and then passing on that information, obviously, to the sales teams and financial advisors. And I think that's just a position that I really wanted to break into, just becoming an expert in a certain industry or sector,
Yeah.
and becoming a lead analyst eventually.
Nice. Did you have was there a specific niche you wanted to go into initially, or was it did you was real estate kind of the best opportunity that presented itself?
Yeah, well, I guess if you have a background in finance and accounting, you traditionally move into either covering financials, consumer, or real estate here in Sydney.
Yeah.
Obviously, because with healthcare, tech, industrials, they like to get guys straight from industry.
Mhm.
So I think just having that background in finance accounting, you really understand the books with real estate. You understand the actual valuation side as well. So real estate was definitely on the cards. I think from a investing standpoint, I've always been quite passionate about real estate, consumer stocks, and tech stocks. So yeah, it was tossing up between consumer and real estate for sure.
Nice. And then when you were back in school, talk to me a little bit about the recruiting, for these internships and just the makeup of your class. Are most people from Sydney that go to University of Sydney? What is it, a mix for all across APAC?
Yeah. So I guess with the University of Sydney, I guess it is considered a bit more of a top tier or globally recognized university here.
Yeah.
And as a result, we do have a lot of, I guess, recruitment, I guess, agencies coming on campus, or you've got a lot of networking events where,
Yeah.
Deloitte or your big consulting companies will come on campus.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where you have your first chat, get those connections. Um, but I wouldn't say it's as big a thing as maybe in the US. Here, it's a lot more trying to, leverage your connections on LinkedIn, or trying to, get an internship via your traditional application method. But in terms of the makeup, I guess with Sydney, you do have a lot of international students coming in as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of students from the Asian, I guess, subcontinent, you got coming in, India, China, Taiwan, etc.
Yeah.
But it is a very diverse university for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. So in terms of just how you were thinking about this and getting your own, creating your own opportunities, because it sounds like there was limited on campus, there's networking events and whatnot, but you really had to apply yourself. There was not as much hand holding. Do a lot of people kind of leave Sydney to do internships? Are they going to Melbourne at all? Are they going to Hong Kong? Are they going to Singapore? What was the makeup there? Or was it a pretty small percentage that are making it out?
Yeah, well, I guess with finance specifically, surprisingly, Sydney is one of the more bigger
Yeah.
hubs for that in Australia.
Yeah.
People come to Sydney for that. And I think it's just more so we've got, it's a small population and it's a small city globally, but in terms of Australia, it is the biggest city. Um, so you don't see many people traveling abroad. I know in the US, you've obviously got your towns and your smaller cities, and then you go to the big city. Whereas here, it's kind of everyone's kind of congregated around Sydney or Melbourne, and wherever you're situated, you probably just work there. Or if you want to take your chances to Europe, to UK specifically, that's a big trend we've been seeing.
Nice. So you kind of in your first, I guess we'll call it sophomore year internship, or kind of did the full 10 months. So were you doing it during classes and whatnot, or were you taking?
Yeah, yes. It started off with a 6 month internship, and at this time we had, I guess, online university just because of COVID.
Oh,
So it was a lot more flexible. You didn't have to attend the lectures in person. And as a result, you had flexibility to manage working an internship and then obviously managing
typical
university.
now? Do they still allow that, or are people still doing
I
offsites?
think it's a bit hybrid these days. I know in my last semester of university, it was 100% in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think back then I was quite fortunate because I could do the role
Yeah, you
without.
built up a really nice kind of CV toward
Yeah,
the life.
yeah, and I mean, it was quite tricky balancing university with work. I think that's the first thing a lot of people realize because I guess when you're a bit younger, your time management's not the best, and you're trying to kind of contribute to the workplace, and then you've got to kind of manage 3, 4 subjects on the side. But it's something you just got to work out if it's something you really want to break into.
Got it. And so kind of your final internship, was that at Fruitcore Center as a financial analyst?
Yeah, so that was actually a full time role. And so I think at that time, that was me working with an industry across the consumer side.
You hadn't
Uh,
graduated yet, but they hired you full time.
yeah, well, I think I just impressed them during the interviews because I had a strong knowledge of accounting and commercial finance, which is what they were looking for.
Yeah.
And, I think with my experience at Shaw and Partners, I think that really set me up as well. You can talk to the role there. And obviously, it's very different fields. This one's more industry. Obviously, I now work on the market side, but it was definitely great understanding the end-to-end components of the business. And I think that's what
Nice.
really
Like, what
helped.
was the business? Yeah, explain to it. Like,
Yeah, so it was a global FMCG company. So largely shipping drinks, so beverages. It's owned by Suntory, so the Japanese whiskey company. So
logistics, but more bottling and
yeah, I mean, they do distribution, so they're largely, wholesaling it out. And my role, I was working within commercial finance, so you're pretty much doing the profitability modeling, doing the BPM analysis. It's all the numbers side. You pass it on to sales; they make those corporate decisions, and then you're just kind of an intermediary between them and supply chain.
got it. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about just like the decision to leave there because you were there for about a year, and I think around the same time you were graduating,
Yep.
uh, finally getting or finishing up your classes, the last ones you had to graduate. Were you on campus still, like for that final semester? You said.
Yeah, yeah. So this was a really tricky semester because I was working full time, and then I'd
You're
be
like,
in.
how did you pull that off? How many hours were
Yeah.
you?
Well, fortunately for me, I did quite well at Suntory, so they were like, you know what, we're more than happy for you to take a few hours off on whatever days to go into uni, come back, get your stuff done. And I think with that kind of work, it wasn't really, oh, yeah, markets open, markets close. You're working within that period. It's more so, you're
Problem.
working for industry. You just kind of work around that. I might wake up early, get some work done. I might come back late after 8, 9 p.m., get some work done. So you just kind of have to work around that, make sure your deliverables done on time, and then yeah.
Nice. So you graduated, and then was the thought right away, like, was there ever a thought in your head of like, hey, I'm going to stay here, grow with the business, or were you already kind of networking? Let's talk about like your transition to Deloitte and how you pulled that off.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess at the time, this was also where I was, I really enjoyed working at Centauri. I think is definitely very different to what your traditional pathway in finance is.
Yeah.
Um, and I definitely learned so much there. But I think,
How big was
um,
the finance team there? Like,
right,
how big was that team there at Centauri?
well, it was a big company. I think my team specifically would have been less than 10 people, at
Yeah.
least within the Australian office.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so you're taking on a lot of work yourself. It's a great place if you wanted to, showcase responsibility.
Yep.
And I think obviously unlike grad programs or internships, you're not just doing the PowerPoints. You're pretty much in the background doing everything else. So I think it was great leadership opportunity there as well.
Like a lot of
Um,
Excel, doing analytics and analysis on the data and stuff like that.
yeah, because I mean they give you ownership of the actual like product. So if I had ownership of 3 or 4 drinks, like an energy drink or a coffee, it would be my responsibility to look after those products, speak with the sales teams, speak with the clients, and be that main source of contact, as opposed to just supporting a senior in that instance.
Interesting. That's awesome. Okay. So, yeah, talking about your decision of just like the pivot and the lateral to Deloitte, and then yeah, I want to hear a little bit about kind of when you started there because I think you joined Academy soon after you joined Deloitte.
Yeah, yeah, I did. So I joined Deloitte in February for the grad program.
Yeah.
So I landed the role a few months before, did like tons and tons of interviews. I think to this day that might have been the most strenuous interview process. More so,
How many rounds?
I think it could have been 5 because you do your first couple with like a HR representative, and there's like a phone call. Then you got to do some psychometrics, and then there's like your case study, and then you got to do a final with like the partner and director. So it's
Tell me about the case study. Like, what were they having you do? Like, is it general business case?
yeah, it's purely just your traditional consulting case study. So that you'd be it's like your assessment center. So I think in the US you guys call it
Super day.
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so we call it assessment center. So you've got yourself and maybe 20 to 30 other potential grads. You sit on these square tables, four people per table. They'll hand you a case study, so a business problem, like this company is losing sales, find out the reason, or how can they, cut costs. Like it would be just I guess, an arbitrary business problem. You got to work together, delegate. Um, and then I think less so than your technical skills, it's just trying to assess how good you are working with other people. Are you going to be that person that's quite communicative, or are you just going to take charge and try and outshine everyone? So there's a lot of psychology behind it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm sure it's the same there as well.
How was your yeah, it is. There's it's less often the group type dynamic,
Yeah,
less often in the US than it is in the UK and Europe. It's more common in UK.
yeah, yeah.
US, it's typically they'll just put you through a gauntlet of like 6 or 7 interviews in a row.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that psychology and the game theory aspect of these kind of group dynamic or group cases. Did you feel like you want to obviously not be silent, right? But you also don't want to be overly pushy, right? So did you?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you've also got to assess who's, because they'll put like, so in my instance, they placed a Deloitte analyst or lead analyst or something on our tables. Also, I guess there's a Deloitte person on each table. And you've got to kind of assess their body language and how they are as well. And so some of them might be a lot more extroverted and talkative. So I guess you've got to kind of mirror that maybe and just kind of, adhere to that. Whereas some are a bit more reserved and they're a bit more just watchful, just kind of seeing what you guys are doing.
Mhm.
But I think, in my opinion, it's obviously good to showcase your skills and your knowledge of the topic. But I think there is a way to do so without speaking over people or just taking the paper, putting it in front of you, and then assigning tasks to yourself. I think a lot of people try and do that just to say, I'm a leader, I can do this myself.
Yeah.
But I don't think at that stage anyone wants, they're not looking for a Fortune 500 CEO, right? They're just looking for a grad, someone that can, listen to instructions, someone that's, personable, great at communicating. They seem like a pretty nice person. And I think that's what will help you stand out a bit more. If you can talk well to the other people, you come across as friendly. You're very open about, sharing ideas. Like if you're asking other people for their thoughts and their input, I think that goes a long way as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you go through the gauntlet of 5 rounds with the group case, all that stuff, and then is there a round after that final case, or they just call you up and say, "Hey, you have the
Yes, it's around with the director at the brand.
more
Uh,
behavioral?" I assume
sorry?
more behavioral, more like fit-based questions, or
Well, yeah. So I guess funny enough, I was coming into it expecting, you're going to ask me about some valuation questions or some technical questions, but I think I got quite fortunate. Or depends how you look at it. I think if you can build some rapport with the person, they're quite friendly, and more than anything, by the end of the conversation, we just started talking about travel plans, and I think we are talking about our weekend plans. I think we got to a stage where we're just kind of just having rapport with one another.
yeah.
It did start off with just behaviorals. Like, oh, tell us about yourself. Can you name us an instance in which you've um, showcased accounting and finance skills? What's your greatest achievement? Or, what do you do in your spare time? So it is definitely very behavioral based. There was not necessarily any technical questions,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's just really important to come across as like a good person, or
Yeah,
you
and
can
so
use
they
quite
so
well.
they kind of come in, and then yeah, it sounds like did you get the offer right away, like when you were walking out, or how did you when?
Well, I felt quite good after the conversation. And then I guess with your big firms like Deloitte, they do like a big outreach maybe 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I guess like a big round of just calling everyone. So they did give me a call 2 weeks later. That they gave me the offer. And I really liked the team. The role sounded interesting. So at the time I was like, what, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And
Were you
so
in
that meant
any other were you
obviously.
in sorry to interrupt, were you in other processes at all during this time? Or
I actually landed a management consulting role
mhm,
uh, at another boutique investment firm here. It's called Protivity.
mhm.
So they actually broke out from Arthur Anderson. So I think
That's
obviously,
familiar, yeah. I've heard of Protivity. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
yeah. So they broke out from Arthur Anderson like 20 years ago, and Arthur Anderson went down.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like the sister company here to Accenture, I believe.
Mhm.
So I landed a management consulting role there, and if I'm being honest, the compensation was much better, and the line of work sounded really good. But I think it just wasn't in the cards for me to go down consulting. I just wasn't a fan of management consulting specifically. I wanted to get down into the details of the technical side of valuation work. Hence, I took the Deloitte offer.
Got it. Okay, so not many people have that foresight so early in their career to turn down the higher offer. So talk to me a little bit about like your progress there. You were there for a year and a half before getting this equity research role.
Yep.
I think within a few months you joined Academy. Talk to me about like that decision and like why join us. It sounds like you have a pretty good head on your shoulders. You probably already interviewed really well. What made you kind of think that the Academy would help?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess even when I joined Deloitte, the role was obviously very interesting, but I think with many people there, and as unfortunate as it is to say, Deloitte is a great place to be for me anyway, for 2 years, 3 years maybe. You understand the industry a bit more, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do for the long term.
Yeah.
It was definitely equity research that was within my sights. And I think I did recognize that quite early. Hence joining the WSO that's why I made that decision back in, I think, March last year.
Hmm.
Um, but in saying that, the 1.5 years I was at Deloitte, the main thing you're doing is you're working across so many different sectors. And I think that's what really helps because you're not just working with financials, you're working with your industrials and your miners. Because I think the deal work, it's quite generic in terms of the structure of it. So if you can kind of apply that to any sector for the most part, at least.
Yeah.
Uh,
So when you kind of took the Deloitte offer and you joined us, say a month or two after, was it something where it's like you knew this was going to be a stop that would help educate you, but you knew this wasn't like a long term place of like 3 or 4 years? You kind of knew eventually you wanted to go because did you have your CFA at that point? CFA level one, I mean.
no, so I had my level one in November last year. So
Gotcha.
I
So
was studying towards it. Yeah.
yeah, so you kind of already had a sense of like, I want to get more markets, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
little bit about just like when you came in, were you working long hours there? How were you balancing kind of the assignments inside the program and then also working full time? Because I know there's some potential students who are like, "Oh, that's a lot to handle." It sounds like you were used to having a busy schedule with your previous setup too. So, was it something where it was easy for you, or was it a tough year?
Yeah. I mean, it's like cheesy as this is going to sound, I think I was so passionate about working within that equity research field. So doing those courses for me, it never felt like, oh, this is like homework I'm going to do after work. It kind of felt like, this is what I really want to do, right? This is,
Yeah.
if you look at the tangible benefits that can arise afterwards, you start to stop looking at things like it's an assignment or it's a chore. So even like I guess your mock interviews or your technical courses or just, your 7 stories. For me, that's, I love doing it because you feel quite established afterwards. You feel a lot more confident. You can go into interviews and networking programs a lot more um, with clarity, I feel.
Yeah.
So I guess, sure, it takes up time, but it's not necessarily the kind of time you think when you associate homework or assignments is the best way to put it.
That's fair. Maybe we should change the name inside the dashboard. Call it no, don't call it assignments. Call it like boost or something. Like, have you finished the boost or like have you finished something? Yeah, it's interesting because it does have a negative connotation, I think, for certain students, right?
Well, I
Um,
think if you want to break into a field, this is what you got to do, right? You got to kind of, it's not an easy field to break into. So it was never going to be a walk in the park. That's just the way I look at it.
yeah, and I look at your dashboard. I see you did a ton of hours inside the courses. I see you did a lot of hours one on one with the mentors, but even your mocks were really high. So it doesn't surprise me that you made it to where you did. Talk to me a little bit about just like your preparation, like in terms of your focus and stuff like that. Was it, and then well, I want to get a little to the networking and stuff, but talk to me a little bit about your like technical preparations. Like, was it hyper focused on like DCF, technicals, market oriented stuff? How did you kind of get up to speed there?
Yeah. So I guess prior to joining the WSO, I had a bit of background just because with Deloitte, you're doing a lot of DCFs with fixed income instruments. So it's not the same, but your technical skills are kind of getting carried across. And I have a pretty hefty stock portfolio, which I ran valuations for myself and wrote reports for
Mm.
on my end just to kind of get prepped. So I think joining WSO, it was just a bit more for like a technical touch because obviously the courses they're so nice and in depth. You kind of build those refined skills that kind of take you a long way after. But I did have the background and the fundamentals behind it. But I think, yeah, in terms of prep, I think having a knowledge for not just the step by step of things, I think having a conceptual understanding of how a DCF works is important because in most interviews or even chats with people, they're never going to really ask you to recite what's the assumptions and the inputs for this. They often just ask, why do you think it's misvalued? Like, why do you think the stock is undervalued from an intrinsic standpoint?
Mhm.
So you have to conceptually understand, well, okay, look, it's not just because the cost of equity is this or the beta is this. You have to understand why is the beta that, or, why is free cash flow coming in at this level? And I think I always strongly advise people to invest on your own. I think if you have your own stock portfolio, you're investing quite actively, you have an intrinsic understanding of how the markets are working. And, when you're buying in and selling stocks, you definitely build that conceptual understanding of the valuation side as well.
Yeah, and the passion shows when you're in the interview. You can argue about something, and they probably love that, right? That's the type of person they want. They don't want somebody who's just going to go along with whatever opinion, right? They had.
Yeah, because I know they're going to have so many networking chats with so many, high, like uni students who, and look, a lot of uni students are quite passionate, but I think they lack, um,
Context.
yeah, I think they just kind of hear what their mates say or what YouTube says, which is, you got to impress them with financial knowledge and DCF knowledge and recite, what did the S&P close at? And I think, look, it's good to be across markets, but at the end of the day, you're talking to these established adults who have worked in the industry for like 10, 15 years, right? And, they're looking for someone that conceptually understands what they're talking about, and they can, they don't need a script to talk to you about stocks.
Yeah.
And I know it's quite difficult and it takes a while to get there, but you just got to invest. You got to, I mean, there's a guy called Aswat Damodaran. He's one of the more,
Oh yeah, he was a keynote speaker at our event like 10 years,
oh, that's,
decade
yeah,
ago.
that's great. Well, I'd strongly advise everyone to watch his value. He has all his lectures online, which is insane to me because it's the greatest playlist of valuation videos you'll ever watch. And he pretty much it talks in depth about the intricacies of valuation. And I think everyone that works in equity research, at least, I'm sure even investment banking, it's such a great source of material.
He's amazing.
So yeah, just, if I had one piece of advice on valuation, just go watch that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about just the networking. So back up to like, taking the role at Deloitte. Obviously very exciting. You're going to be doing the valuation work. You kind of know you're in the right channel. You're not totally into equity research, but you're kind of getting the right skill set. Talk to me about like when you ramped up your networking. Was it once you joined us, once you got your stories locked in, team A, all that stuff? And like, did you follow the program to a T, or had you already did you already have a pretty wide network and then it was just a question of when you wanted to reactivate it?
Yeah, no. So it was definitely when I joined the WSO because I had a chat with a few mentors there. Um, Tim was great. Matthew was great. Craig, they were great because they all had a bit of a background in that research side.
Hmm.
And the first thing they told me was, it's good to build your valuation skills, but you got to meet people. You got to start talking to people. And I think I really jumped it up middle of 2024. So I didn't necessarily just message people on LinkedIn. I think what I did was I actually went to shareholder events. And look, I'm not saying that everyone needs to have 20 stocks to go to an event, but most of them are pretty open to the public. But I had a few shares. I'd go to the shareholder meetings, which is pretty close, it's quite centralized in Sydney. And all the lead analysts for that stock would be there, right? Taking notes, taking a Q&A. And fortunately for me, I actually sat down to the lead analyst on one of the financials here in Sydney at Morningstar.
Hmm.
And I didn't know she was an analyst. I was just talking to her about the stock. And then we talked for a good 45 minutes. And she thought I was another analyst there. And then she realized I was just there just because I had a passion for equity research. And she gave me a referral for Morningstar. And then I guess that was another story, but I ended up doing 2 months of interviews for Morningstar for a role that I was not really qualified for. And then I lost out to someone
It
that
was
just
like an
had that.
analyst. It was like an analyst level role or something. So
Yeah, I think just she saw me talking about the stock and she knew that, yeah, okay, he understands what he's talking about. And I think because I didn't know she was just a lead analyst and she didn't know that I was a grad. We just had a very organic conversation.
I love,
Um,
I love that story.
yeah. So it could have been a movie, just joined Morningstar as I talked to her. But we're still in contact. And I mean, that role wasn't successful, but I think, it was just more for I just wasn't qualified. I was six
Talk to
months
me
in.
about that. You're not qualified because it's kind of interesting because you have the conversation. She thinks like just based on the conversation that you're knowledgeable enough. You have obviously the valuation knowledge. You did finance and accounting. She can tell you know what you're talking about. So you're there. Talk to me about like the referral and how that all played out when they realized like, oh, he's not even an associate. But
Yeah, well, when she realized because we exchanged our LinkedIn. So I got a LinkedIn and then I think she saw my profile and then she's like, oh, well, I didn't even know you were a grad. And then, I just told her, oh, I'm working Deloitte, quite passionate about markets. And then she said, oh, hey, look, well, if you're ever interested, just shoot me a message.
Mhm.
So I messaged her. She got me a referral for a role as equity research analyst I was like a generalist role at
Yeah.
Morningstar.
Why do you say you
And
weren't qualified for it? Talk to me about that. Like, it was
yeah, well, I think well, they didn't tell me that, but I think because I lost out to, I made it to the final round. There's three people
yeah,
and it came from like, I think 70 or 80 or whatever.
yeah.
And the other two had a background in equity research. They had covered stocks. So, and I think they were obviously looking for someone that, they're not just smart or, they understand stocks, but if you've worked within that field, you've gone to corporate access events, you've actually, done the hours. I think they just wanted someone that was a bit more of a safety buffer,
Yeah.
if that's the best way to put
Yeah,
it.
more seasoned, they're less of a risk. Like you're still a little bit of a risk. You're not having.
Yeah, exactly right. Because at the end of the day, I was 23. I was just, a grad at uni.
Yeah.
Um, So they probably, understood, look, he might become a good analyst eventually, but, right now we just need someone for earnings season. We need someone that can just pump out these reports without any questions asked.
Yeah.
And look, I'm sure the other couple of candidates were great as well. This is not me, dismissing them at all.
Oh, no, yeah.
And, but yeah, it was a great experience more than anything, and I built some connections there, which I
That was relatively fast from when you started the networking. That happened pretty early on, or was that kind of later in 2020?
yeah, it happened in June last year, so which is very early. And again, it wasn't as a result of me messaging someone on LinkedIn, which is obviously a great way to do things, but I just got quite fortunate just going to a
Well, I mean,
shareholder.
you put yourself there. So talk to me about the current role that you landed and how did that one pan out? How did you get that interview?
Yeah, so I guess CLSA Equity Research. Yeah, so this is an analyst position, and so this is just a lateral move across. And I guess how it started was, well, they were hiring, so they put out those LinkedIn announcements. I didn't find out through a mutual or a connection, but I did have a connection that I had spoken to that worked at CLSA, and this was during just networking. Just message people on LinkedIn,
Yep.
get a conversation, get a coffee or a phone call. Fortunately, this person was working at this firm, and he told me actually that look, they're looking for someone with 3 to 9 years of experience. But look, you know what? I'll put your CV down. You seem like a great guy. Let's see what they say. And I think out of due diligence, they often give interviews to referrals, just as a form of like,
Yeah,
I think
courtesy.
punishment for it. Yeah, like a courtesy,
Just say, yeah,
because
yeah.
like
Like, we're not going to hire this kid, but fine, we'll talk to him because he's a referral kind of thing.
exactly right. And then I did an interview with the senior analyst, and he literally told me by the end of the conversation, he's like, "Oh, mate, you're great." And I'm sorry you didn't, we didn't like look at your CV first. We just kind of scrapped it just because you didn't have the experience. So it goes to show to people out there that applying on LinkedIn is not going to get you an interview. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't have a connection on the inside, it's especially for,
Oh, true. Yeah.
yeah, it's very hard. So yeah, fortunately, I did quite great. And then the next 2 rounds were with the heads of research. So I did one with the head of research for financials, and then another one with the head of research of the broader team.
Yeah.
Uh, and they went quite well. And again, there weren't too many technicals. There are a few stock pitches. So you got to pitch a stock,
Yep.
and it goes to show that they're obviously looking for technical
Are you
skills.
willing to share which stock you pitched and the
Well, yeah, I mean, I pitched a housing stock here. It's called Mirvac. So it's an Australian real estate company.
yeah.
They've got commercial properties and residential properties.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, I did a bit of background reading before that because I knew they covered that stock.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know if you got Bloomberg or Refinitiv, you can see the analyst and what companies they. So that's another thing. Do your due diligence before interviews. Understand what the company does, which companies they cover.
Yeah.
Because if you come in with a stock that they cover, you can. If you've read their reports as well, I think that really helps because you understand what kind of investments or line of investments they're running into, what their philosophy is, what type of valuation even they're running for stocks. Because Morgan Stanley, Macquarie, JP Morgan, they all do different valuations if you read their reports. Some are aggressive, some are conservative. So I think it's just building up that knowledge. It's quite useful.
I love that. So you're basically going through these round after round after round. You end up getting the offer. Obviously, it worked out for you. But I think it was really more of a question of like the talent rising, you getting that opportunity, right? Because if you had just only dropped your CV, there was no interview coming to you if you didn't have that referral internally.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you got to get rejected from a few friends as well, because I think that humbles you a bit. Because
Yep.
I think at university you feel a lot more confident. I'm a Deloitte grad. I can get any job I want.
Yeah.
But realistically, that's not the case. You're just another person, right?
Especially for equity research, when there's just not a lot of seats, is the issue.
Yeah, exactly. There's like what 2 people per sector per
Not a
firm.
lot. So
It's
like,
getting smaller as well. So
yeah, so it's very tough. It's very tough to land those, especially for like the analysts sometimes never leave, right? So it's like,
yeah, and I don't know about the US, but we don't have grad programs for equity research. It is largely just it's like no, I'm not saying it's private equity where you kind of enter at a later
yeah,
stage in
a
your
second,
career.
it's the second step. Yeah, there is some here in the US, but it tends to be at the bigger banks, like they'll have
Yeah, okay, yeah. Because here, yeah, there's might be a couple of research programs, but for the most part, they hire seasoned
laterals.
individuals. Yeah.
So kind of
Right.
looking back at your journey, kind of anything you would have changed or any kind of piece of advice for someone similar in a similar seat. Maybe they're not quite in the role they want to be in. They want to go maybe equity research or whatnot. Any kind of advice you give for them besides what you've already given, looking back?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's never going to be a traditional pathway for most people. And I think if you're joining the Wall Street Oasis, it does mean that you potentially didn't get that internship in university. You don't have those connections. Like with me, I'm coming from Sydney, right? So it's a little market here. I don't really have too many connections in the industry. But I think the important part is whatever field you're trying to break into it, become quite focused. And I know that's such a generic saying, but what I mean by that is if you want to do equity research, talk to people in equity research, understand everything there is to know about the day to day. What skills will you be doing? It's not enough to just be a smart person. And I think that's the key takeaway. You can't just be a smart person. You have to really understand what happens day to day. And I mean, I'd recommend this for maybe investment banks as well. I don't know, but I think writing your own reports are quite important because if you can understand a company, even if it's not from an M&A lens, but if you can understand a company, what their competitive advantage are, the valuations, and take it to interviews, it does showcase that, look, I'm passionate about what I'm trying to do. So that's what I've been doing. I just write my reports, bring it to my interviews, and they get quite, it's a 16-page initial coverage. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um,
They showcasing
and
you do the work, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think networking obviously is very important. And look, I mean, if you're trying to message someone on LinkedIn, chances are they're not going to reply. I've been in that seat.
80%,
But
about an 80% chance they won't connect with you. Yeah.
exactly, right? So you've got to just kind of keep at it. It's just the one person might come through and that's all you really need. And it's not about getting a referral, if that makes sense. I think with networking, you're just trying to learn and then organically it just kind of plays out. So, just keep
Yeah.
messaging those people and just go to shareholder events, go to networking events. I think if you're a CFA candidate as well, you have access to so many like CFA networking events. And I think that's the more people you know, the more likely it is that they will know someone and then a role opens up and then you might know someone at that firm.
Yeah, and it becomes just so much more natural rather than seeking the referral on that first call or trying like, before you've established that relationship. What's really interesting is the role you landed, you had already had the coffee chat.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with this person, I mean, yeah, it was quite organic. I mean, when I had the coffee chat with that person, they weren't even working at CLSA. It was just like another firm, and I guess organically, you got there. But I guess another thing, like I was horrible at networking when I first started. I didn't really like it. I thought it just wasn't me.
Felt
But
felt
I
not
think but once you do it a lot, it becomes more of an organic conversation, right? It doesn't become like a networking thing. It just becomes, I just want to have a chat with you, you know, phone call, coffee, and it becomes quite just normal.
yeah.
And start seeing it as less of I've got to become mates with them to get that job.
Yeah. You don't try to force anything. You kind of just you start learning how to read different types of people,
Yeah,
different everything, and so you become a better conversationalist. You become a better interviewer. There's so many other like
yeah,
set
exactly.
downfall benefits from doing the calls.
Yeah,
It's like the same thing with like the top salespeople. Like just the more calls and failures you have, the better you become just naturally, just through pure volume. And
yeah, exactly. And people see that if you come across as authentic and interested, people will see that, and I think they'll give you credit for it as well.
yeah, I love it. Well, Mithun, I appreciate you taking the time. Went a little longer than expected, but hopefully you're not late to work. I know you're,
It's all right. Yeah, it's fine.
but yeah, thanks so much, and stay in touch. Please let us know if we can help you on anything going forward.
Yeah, no, thanks, Patrick. Really appreciate what the Wall Street Oasis has done for me, and I'm sure you guys will continue helping a lot more candidates that are coming through.
Yeah, it's
But I'll definitely stay in touch with you guys. I'm definitely in touch with like Chris and the others from
awesome.
the Daily Peel, so that's good. Anyway, have a great rest of the day. I'll chat to you soon.
Thanks.